Today we'll take a look at the leaders of the Ravenwing and some of the other most competitive units in the Dark Angels Codex. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today we'll be continuing in our Dark Angels series, looking at the unique datasheets, tactics and strategies from the Dark Angels Codex and seeing what we can do with them now we have all of the boosted Dark Angels rules from Ritual of the Damned. In this video we'll be looking at the Dark Angels Talonmaster, their unique Ravenwing Landspeeder HQ choice, armed with a twin assault cannon and twin heavy bolter. And we'll also look at Sammael and Sableclaw, the master of the Ravenwing, who has exactly the same loadout, but slightly different stats and buffs. Both of these guys got enormously better with the advent of Ritual of the Damned, and to be honest they were already one of the interesting units beforehand. I honestly think that we'll be seeing a lot of them in competitive play, so I've been looking forward to having a look at their rules. In the background, the Ravenwing Talonmasters are the lieutenants of the Ravenwing serving under Sammael. They ride in customised landspeeders, with twin assault cannons, twin heavy bolters, with boosted Auspex scanning gear to ensure the foe has nowhere to hide even though they might cower in cover. Despite their notable rank in the Ravenwing, the Talonmasters actually rank below the Black Knights, and none as of yet have been initiated into the Inner Circle. Notable Talonmasters of the Dark Angels chapter include Evangel and Zariel, the baddest landspeeder on the streets. So some fearsome war gear and abilities mentioned here, let's see how they function on the tabletop. So the Ravenwing Talonmaster is a HQ choice for Codex Dark Angels. They'll cost you 180 points, so not cheap in the slightest, but then it's not every character that comes with 18 heavy weapon shots every single turn. The Talonmaster is a landspeeder with movement 16, weapon skill 2 up, ballistic skill 3 up, strength 4, toughness 6, 6 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 8 and a 3 up save. They have no invul save, so in all honesty, for the points that you're investing here, these Talonmasters will quickly fold to any sort of heavy firepower. They're incredibly fast though, and have a decent melee stat line. As we've already mentioned, he's armed with twin assault cannons and twin heavy bolters, so 18 strength 5 and 6 heavy weapon shots per turn, and when you're in the Dark Angels boosted heavy weapons doctrine, that assault cannon will be a mighty 30-inch range and AP -2. As if that weren't all though, they have the no escape rule, which means that enemy units don't gain any bonus to their cover save for being inside a terrain feature for any Ravenwing units within 6 inches of this model. So that means he'll buff himself, any other Talonmasters or Sammael nearby, things like Black Knights, or even things like Dark Talons or Landspeeder Vengeances. Ignores cover is a great aura ability, and that's a solid buff. He also has Tactical Precision, which is basically the Lieutenant rerolls, and you reroll wound rolls of 1 for all Dark Angels within 6 inches. Not just Ravenwing there, that's all Dark Angels as well. It has the standard special rules, Angels of Death, giving him Shock Assault, so 5 attacks on the charge, and the combat doctrines that we've already mentioned. They also have the Ravenwing Jinx special rule, meaning that if you do advance, then you can have a 4-up invul save if you need it. It's worth noting as well that the Ravenwing Talonmasters do suffer the move and shoot penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons, unless there are any special rules that can allow them to waive that, which we might come on to later. So if you do use that mighty 16-inch movement, they will be hitting on 4s, which isn't exactly ideal to be honest, though he's still firing a lot of firepower around. Probably the biggest and most useful aspect of the Talonmaster though, is the fact that he's a character, and the character has only 6 wounds, so you won't be able to target it with shooting weapons unless he's the closest model, or you're packing some sort of sniper gear. This is the way that the Talonmasters can keep safe, keep on dishing out that murderous amount of firepower, and hopefully be an absolute thorn in the side of your opponent all game long. This should be particularly easy to achieve now their assault cannons are longer ranged, meaning that they won't need to push up quite as far to be able to get into true lead flinging range. So basically the Talonmaster is a unit that wants to loiter behind your main battle line, giving everyone his nice buffs of reroll 1s to wound, and ignores cover for Ravenwing, and mowing down the enemy all game long, while hopefully never being targeted or engaged in close combat. Talking of close combat, I've just realised I forgot to mention that he is equipped with a power sword, so not exactly going to achieve wonders, unless you soup it up with a relic of some sort. Now however, we're going to move on to Sammael in his configuration in Sableclaw. Now Sammael in Sableclaw is basically a boosted Talonmaster in every way, and he gives slightly different buffs. First of all, he has a ballistic skill of 2 up, meaning that he'll be hitting on 3s even when he moves. He's got 7 wounds and has a 4+ invul save for his Iron Halo, so he's enormously harder to take out than a standard Talonmaster, and likely won't fold to just the first couple of heavy weapon shots that you sling his way. Finally, he has got 5 attacks and is equipped with the Raven Sword, a Strength +1, AP -3, Damage 2 weapon that goes up to Strength ×2 if he charged. This means he's going to be typically laying down 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling the 1s, at Strength 8, AP -3, 2 damage, so is a really fearsome prospect in melee as well. In Sableclaw, Sammael will cost you 200 points, so a little bit more expensive than the standard Talonmasters, but in all honesty I think that you get a significant upgrade in every way by choosing him. He does differ slightly in the terms of auras he provides though. He has the standard Rites of Battle rule as per a Space Marine Captain, giving all Dark Angels reroll 1s to hit when they're within 6 inches of him. But he also has a Grandmaster of the Ravenwing special rule, meaning that all Ravenwing models within 6 inches just get full rerolls of all misses. So this will be great for him running alongside a bunch of Talonmasters, or indeed any other Ravenwing unit, whether that's Dark Talons, Landspeeder Vengeances, or Black Knights. He basically trades out the Ignores Cover ability, and the reroll 1s to wound as per the Lieutenant bonus to get this aura. Other than that, all of his rules are the same as the Talonmaster, except that Sammael also gains the Inner Circle keyword, which can be useful for a couple of stratagems. So to put it bluntly, basically Sammael and the Talonmasters are absolutely made for each other. Sammael will give everyone rerolls to hit, and the Talonmaster will give everyone rerolls of 1 to wound, and also ignore cover. If I had to compare the two, I'd probably get Sammael before I got a Talonmaster, just because he's so much tougher and better in combat and has a higher ballistic skill, but I think if you bring one of them, you're really incentivized to bring the other and run them alongside each other. I've seen several people run Sammael alongside 1 or 2 Talonmasters, or even alongside 3, where you're theoretically putting out 72, Strength 5 or better, AP -2 shots at 30-inch range, or with massive rerolls and ignores cover, and there's virtually nothing in the game that wants to be hit by that little lot. So let's have a look at some of the ways that we can soup up these units and get more out of them. Firstly, we have the Dark Angels Doctrine and Chapter trait. If you're running isolated Talonmasters, they will of course not only not degrade their ballistic skill, but also reroll 1s via Grim Resolve if they stay still, though of course if they're running alongside Sammael they won't care about this. In terms of other character buffs, between Sammael and the Talonmasters, you're pretty well covered for rerolls. Chaplain buffs could potentially be useful though, particularly the +1 to wound litany for targeting the closest unit is particularly powerful on Strength 5 and 6 weapons, as to be wounding Toughness 8 on 4s, and everything Toughness 4 or less on 2s. As these guys are vehicles, Tech Marines can also potentially heal them up, though ideally you wouldn't really want to be having them shot in the first place, but a Tech Marine could potentially be useful if you're taking fire from heavy sniper weapons. In terms of other unit synergy, obviously these guys dish out their rerolls to all the Ravenwing around them very handily, but they can also receive some benefits such as the Dark Shrouds, -1 to hit from ranged weapons. Again, ideally these guys should not be on the front line for the most part, but later in the game they might have to be, and your enemy barely being able to hit them is only a good thing. Let's talk Warlord Traits and Relics now, because Ritual of the Damned has given the Talonmasters some really good ones. Firstly, Sammael's Warlord trait is Master of Maneuver if you choose to take it. It's reroll the distance when you advance and charge. This could be good for getting off some key charges late in the game, particularly from Sammael himself, but in general you're not typically going to be wanting to advance with these guys every turn, particularly because movement 16 is generally going to be enough to get them within the 30 inches they need to dish out all the pain. From the main codex, probably the other good Warlord trait is Stubborn Tenacity, which is a 6+ Feel No Pain type save, or a 5+ Feel No Pain if they didn't move in their last movement phase. It's a small durability buff that you could give a Talonmaster. I'd probably pass it up for one of the Ritual of the Damned ones myself. Talking of those ones though, the single best one for this flying bubble of heavy weapon related death is Impeccable Mobility. This one is a 6-inch aura, where Ravenwing do not suffer any penalty to moving and shooting heavy weapons. This is absolutely amazing for Talonmasters, as usually they'd be hitting on force, so if you can have your entire group of Landspeeders moving around, hitting on either 3s rerolling or 2s rerolling, then you've just increased their firepower by about 1/3 the entire game long just by taking one Warlord trait. And of course you can buy this in with Hero of the Chapter. This is the one that I'd take in the flying character bubble of death, but other ones are good too, such as Outrider, which can allow the Talonmaster and another Ravenwing unit to move 12 inches before the game. This one might be a bit better if you're thinking about buffing other units such as Black Knights or something. In terms of Relics of Caliban, the Talonmasters have their own unique one from Ritual of the Damned. This one is Corvus Oculus, it's plus 6 inch range to their weapons, and also plus 1 to their hit rolls. So this is another cheeky little relic, so you can have 2 of your Landspeeders, Sammael and 1 of your Talonmasters flying around hitting on 2s. Very solid this one, particularly as it also gives you extra range, so if you did have a few of these Landspeeders flying around, then you could put this on the one that you're going to keep towards the back of the formation, knowing that he is almost always going to be in range because of that extra range that he has. Everyone loves 36 inch range assault cannons. I believe that you can't give the special issue war gear to vehicles, so as far as I can tell you can't give the mastercrafted weapon to a Talonmaster and put it on an assault cannon. Please correct me if I'm wrong though, because that would just be absolutely horrific. In terms of the main Codex relics, there's a couple that stand out. Firstly, the Heavenfold Blade is a good way to upgrade a Talonmaster to also be quite good in close combat. This one replaces its Power Sword for Strength +2, AP -3 and D3 damage, and you can make 1 additional attack with the weapon, so these will also be hitting on 2s with 6 attacks at Strength 6 and Damage D3. A good all-round profile that'll do decent damage to most targets. Because these guys are so fast, you definitely have the ability to keep on shooting behind your lines for most of the game, and then go for a big charge at a critical moment when it's kind of make or break time, so having multiple land speeders that can hit very well in close combat could be pretty key. As well, from the main codex there's also the Shroud of Heroes that is -1 to hit rolls that target the bearer of it, so a fairly decent buff to durability this one, which could help out one of the Talonmasters should you want to soup up their defense. The Ravenwing do have their own unique Vigilus formation, the Ravenwing Attack Squadron. This can be another way to soup up the damage for your Talonmasters as well as all the rest of your Ravenwing. They have another Warlord trait to allow your Talonmaster to fight first in the fight phase, which I tend to be quite situational, so I personally wouldn't bother with it myself. However, they do have another very solid relic power sword here called the Monster Slayer of Caliban. This one has exactly the same profile as the Heavenfold Blade, strength +2, AP -3 and damage D3. But you add +1 to wound rolls made against enemy monsters or vehicles, so it's decently strong against infantry and massively stronger than the Heavenfold Blade when you're fighting hard targets. For me, if you are using the attack squadron, I'd rather have this than the Heavenfold Blade, but if you really were going all in on a melee strategy, you could potentially have both. You also gain access to a couple of stratagems here. Signal the Attack is a really important one. This is the one where if a unit has lost a wound from an attack squadron model, all of the other members of the attack squadron get +1 to hit when shooting that target. So between this and the Impeccable Mobility Warlord traits, you could easily have Sammael and all 3 Talonmasters that you could take, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and then rerolling 1s to wound as well. That could be pretty brutal to be honest if they're all focusing on one hard target, such as a big squad of Plague Bearers or something. They also have Swift Strike, which is one for falling back out of close combat just before your opponent tries to strike you. So it could be a way to cheekily run up to something, smack it with your Relic Power Sword, and then get away an extra 16 inches before your opponent even gets to hit you back. So it could potentially allow you to have a free round of close combat without exposing you to harm. It does cost 2 CP though. As for other stratagems now, the Ravenwing get absolutely loads. We ran through them briefly in the Black Knight video, so I'll try and go quite quickly over them here, as there are just so many options. From the main codex, we get the Lion and the Wolf, which could give a Talonmaster or Sammael extra stats if you're combining both Dark Angels and Space Wolves. Data link telemetry to make whirlwind attacks automatically hit when they're near land speeders. Speed of the Raven for 1 command point, allowing you to shoot and charge even after you advance. This one could be very solid for getting a ludicrously long charge off, or just accessing your Jinx special rule via advancing and still being able to unload all of your heavy weapons. Armour of Contempt could be used to shrug some mortal wounds, and this one could actually genuinely be very useful if someone tries to take down one of your 6 wound land speeders with a whole load of sniper weapons or some targeted smite attacks. If this could be the difference between your Talonmaster living or dying in one turn, it could actually be a good use of a command point. From Ritual of the Damned we gain a few more. We've already mentioned Hero of the Chapter, the one to give you an additional Warlord trait, which I think could be great to give you impeccable mobility as well as something else. Possibly one of the most powerful stratagems in the entire book is Targeting Guidance. This is 1 command point, and you nominate a unit within 12 inches of a Ravenwing Landspeeder, which does include Sammael or the Talonmasters, and then basically any attacks from your entire Dark Angels army get 4 rerolls to hit against that target. I think this is particularly powerful on Talonmasters and Sammael, as they're both units that are going to be a lot easier to keep alive due to being able to be screened behind other units the majority of the time. Obviously this one is playing a little bit more risky by putting your units close to the unit that you're sanctioning elimination on, but hopefully with all of the buffs to the firepower, this should absolutely eliminate that target. It's just crazy good value for one command point. This is certainly one I'd be thinking about running every single turn, if I could get a land speeder within 12 inches of the enemy and keep it safe. As well as this, we also have a Vase of Assault for 1 command points to give a Talonmaster a 5+ invul in close combat, and Full Throttle, a 1 command point stratagem to allow a Ravenwing unit to double move essentially. So you could have a land speeder move anything up to 38 inches in 1 turn, if it needed to get onto the other side of the battlefield, maybe score an objective or something. Finally, we also have High Speed Focus, which is when a Ravenwing unit is targeted by enemy shooting, it counts as having jinked for the purposes of the shooting attack, which could be a great way to get a Talonmaster a 4-up invul save if you do find one exposed and about to be eliminated by heavy weapons, and is a great reactive durability buff. So tons of options there. As I said, my favourite is the Targeting Guidance, as it can give an enormous buff to the shooting of your entire Dark Angels army just for 1 command point, and the rest are all clever tactical tools that you can use as and when you need them. So how would I use Dark Angels, Talonmasters and Sammael on the field of battle? Just because I haven't mentioned it before, the way that you actually get hold of these kits is to buy the Ravenwing upgrade sprue, and there you get the twin assault cannons and twin heavy bolters. So that's how you get them on the field in the first place. For me though, I'd really like to experiment using that flying attack squadron of Sammael and anywhere between 1 and 3 Talonmasters. I'd give one the impeccable mobility, and then think about other relics to buff on top of that, such as Corvus Oculus, and maybe the Monster Slayer of Caliban. From there, I'd want to deploy them somewhere safe from enemy snipers turn 1, and have a lot of units out of the rest of the list being decent screening units to stop these guys from ever getting directly shot by enemy firepower, meaning that these Ravenwing land speeders could just loiter behind the main Dark Angels battle line and just turn on the absolute hoover of shots that they can spit out. In general, I'd be wanting to hover at 30-inch range from my ideal targets, as that's how long the assault cannons can reach, and from there start with focusing on deleting every enemy infantry unit that's about, and then start focusing on some hard targets later on. If the battle line looks like it's wavering and the enemy are breaking through, or you have enemy fast movers such as flyers coming in, you could certainly think about charging and maybe taking down some of them in close combat, particularly with Sammael, who's both a lot more fighty and a lot more durable. With the Ravenwing Talonmasters, I would only charge them as a last resort, as they're just incredibly fragile. Anything with any decent close combat is just going to chew straight through them with absolutely no trouble. The colossal mobility that these guys have could be pretty useful in late game objective grabbing as well, allowing them to swoop over to the other side of the board in the late stages of the game, eliminate any pockets of infantry still hiding on objectives, and hopefully secure you the win. In terms of some fun numbers from their heavy weapons output, if you did take Sammael alongside 2 Talonmasters, with one of them having impeccable mobility, these guys will, with average rolling, delete 40 guardsmen a turn, and they don't even care at all whether they're in cover or not. I know that 3 of these guys is a decent part of your army, but 3 of them can just cave in the entire enemy front line. If they turn their attention to something like Space Marine aggressors, with average numbers you kill 7 or 8 in 1 turn, again even if they're in cover. Finally, if we take aim at a Leman Russ or an Imperial Knight, we'll be doing an average of 12 wounds or so to it, which honestly really isn't too bad, considering that heavy vehicles aren't really the prime target of these guys. With the rest of the Dark Angels list, if I was going heavy on them, I'd want to be running a decent amount of screening units to keep them safe, things like a decent number of intercessors or aggressors of my own to bully the midfield, maybe some impulsors with shield domes, or even just some random rhinos in the midfield that the enemy really doesn't want to have to bother chewing through. With any other spare points, we'd focus on some heavy anti-tank in the backfield, maybe things like quad-las Contemptors, to try and focus down enemy armour threats and let these Talonmasters get to work on any infantry that are trying to score objectives, and then contribute their firepower against the heavy hitters once the light troops are destroyed. Overall, I think this horrendous little murder formation will be seeing some play in competitive play. It's not necessarily all the easiest to use, just because if you do expose the Talonmasters and they get gunned down, then things can be going from going very well to going very badly very quickly indeed. But if you can manage to keep those Talonmasters alive, then you're set for a good game. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below, particularly if you've had any experience running Talonmasters or Sableclaw since the recent update. I think they're a really fun little unit, and one that isn't really like anything else in the game at the moment. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. We'll certainly be looking at more Dark Angels going forward. I've got my eyes on the Landspeeder Vengeance and the Dark Talon as our next points for review, so stick around if you'd like to see those. I also have a Patreon page. If you're finding these videos helpful at all, then feel free to support. After all, it is what keeps this channel going. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys in the next video.